What's up, everybody out there in CodeX land? This is Dan here doing another interview with another one of the CodeX team as we run through everyone. So we've already interviewed Uncle Gary, already interviewed Jamie. So next up is Tim the Not So Terrible, or
Yeah,
maybe Tim the Terrible. That's for you and the audience to decide.
it depends upon the day.
So So these are just little interviews with everyone on the team. So as a way you can get to know us and see where we started our comics journey and how it's gone through our lives and where we are today. So
Yeah.
thank you for taking the time on this, at least for me, rainy afternoon.
It is sunny and beautiful in Tennessee today, but thank you, Dan, for asking me to go next.
Of course. So well, I mean, you're the heart and soul of Kodak.
I don't know about that. Maybe.
You and Jamie run this all, so you were the next natural one to go.
That's fair. That's fair.
So let's just start off with the obvious. How was it that you started collecting comics? What was it that got you, or what was it that got you reading comics?
Okay, so my first introduction to comic books, like being a kid, I was born in 1979, so I grew up in the 80s and was a teenager in the 90s. So I got to grow up with Transformers and G.I. Joe, Thundercats, Spider-Man and his
Oh,
amazing friends, all that good stuff, right? But my first introduction to comic books proper was when I was 12 years old. No, younger than that. I think I was 11, somewhere in there, 11 or 12. And my mom took us to our grandmother's house. She left us there while her and my grandmother went out yard sale shopping. And she came back with a brown paper sack filled with comic books and said, "Here you go. I got these for you." And inside was Uncanny X-Men Annual number 11, Chrome number 1, a Spectre issue from Volume 2, a Phantom issue. I'm pretty confident of the number. I know like I'm looking at the cover right now. It's got like a little black border. He's fighting in some kind of warehouse that's on fire or something like that, and a couple of other random issues. But those were the first grouping of books that I ever read. I read Uncanny X-Men Annual number 11 and fell in love, and Chrome number 1 that nobody's ever heard of, and that's one of my favorite issues. Those two books are what Gary calls your Genesis books.
so what was it? I usually ask people what got them interested in comics, but I guess that's what would be is someone handing you a bag and say, "Here's a bunch of free
Yeah,
comics when you're
as
10
a
years
kid.
old." But what was it? What was the first book that you got, like after you got those initial books that
Mhm.
were given to you? What was the first one when you went out and decided you were gonna buy some yourself?
So that's really easy to answer, and I don't have it right here in front of me, but I got it over there. It was two issues: Amazing Spider-Man number 351 and Fantastic Four issue. It was 400 and something. I can't remember, but it'll be up here on the screen so you guys can see it. It's got Marvel Boy on the cover, and he's flying away with Alicia Masters, and I think Puppet Master was in there too. I went into a shop called Jones Ice Cream in Baldwin, Michigan. When I was a kid, my mom handed me $2 and she said, "Here you go pick up some comics." And inside this old soda shop, right, that had it looked just like it was right out of the 50s. You walk in there, and all the way in the back, they had this spinner rack of new comic books. And the two that I grabbed was ASM 351 and that Fantastic Four issue. And then I've been pretty much going ever since.
So what was it, when all of us start, we all just kind of pick up like what covers kind of grab us, like this looks exciting, or this, or like
Mhm.
you said, how I was born in 79 too, so I grew up with the same stuff: GI Joe,
Right.
Thundercats, Spider-Man is amazing friends, all that. So you would see stuff like, oh, I watched GI Joe cartoon, let me buy the GI Joe comic. Like, oh, Spider-Man, I watched that cartoon. But which was the which was the first series where you said, "All right, I like this character, I like this series. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to get this every month when the new issue comes out."
So, like the first time I ever had a pull list wasn't until I was an adult. Like the town that I lived in Michigan, they didn't have a comic shop. But they did have this place that sold old back issues. The closest place that we could go to get an LCS in the 90s was Grand Rapids, and that was like an hour away. So I didn't really have an actual pull list until around Civil War, but I had been getting new issues and back issues like my comic shop. I
Hmm.
would get new issues from there. When I was a kid, I guess this is to answer your question, but when I was a kid, when I was a teenager growing up, all of us would get new issues however we could, either through trades or go to the grocery store or anything like that, because they still had, you know what I'm talking about, they had
Yeah,
comic books
that's.
in the grocery stores and stuff.
Oh yeah, they used, like you said, the spinner rack. They used to have the
Yeah.
spinner rack there, right in the magazine section.
See, what the grocery stores that we would go into, they would have the whole magazine section, and down at the bottom, they had 2 rows of comic books,
Oh,
and
okay.
it was hit and miss,
Yeah,
whatever they decided to get in that week. So even if you were collecting Batman or Spider-Man or anything like that, and it wasn't there, you were SOL. You just had
yeah,
to kind of figure it out. I'd get issues like that. Uh, Condition wise, I didn't give a shit. I didn't care,
yeah,
because I just wanted to read the stories. So I was getting a lot of Amazing Spider-Man at that time. My buddy Jim, when I was a teenager, he would get Batman, and what he would do is he would read them and then just ask whoever wanted them, because what he was a one and done. He's like, "Ah, I read it, I don't want it anymore. Do you want it? Yeah, I'll take it." So I got a lot of Batman that way. The Jim Lee run of X-Men was all on the newsstand, and Superman, uh, geez, like all the big titles from the 90s is what I would get, and it would all mainly be from grocery stores, soda shops,
yeah,
things like that, wherever the hell you could find, wherever they sold magazines, they had comic books there.
yeah. The grocery store, the 7-Elevens,
Yeah,
the gas stations,
yeah.
the rest stops when you were going on car trips.
Convenience stores in the middle of a town you've never been in before. Oh, they got a spinner rack. Mom, can I have $5? Yes, fine. Here. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
On.
yeah. The bookstores and the like the Walden Books and
Yeah.
and all those that used to exist. Like you said, they'd have the magazines, and then they have a couple comics on on some of the shelves there. And
See, and the cool thing was like when you'd go to the grocery store, and being a teenager, it's awkward anyways. But you walk over there and you see another kid looking at books, and you get to talking, right? And you're looking at what you're looking for, and you turn around. That's how you make friends. That's how you talk to people, find out about stories you don't know anything about. What are you getting, man? "Oh, I'm getting Incredible Hulk. There's this going on. Oh, wow, I'm getting Batman, Spider-Man. Oh, wow, that's cool." And it just kind of goes from there. It was so awesome. I loved it.
yeah, or like for me, it was going to antique stores with my parents, and being bored, and you just as a kid, and you just wander around looking for something that interests you, and like,
Yeah.
oh, they got a couple like old tin toys here, like, oh, what's in this box? Like, oh, the comic books. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, and then you find what you want, run up to your parents and be like, "Can I get them, please?" "I don't know."
Yeah,
And
my parents were usually pretty good about that because back then, even though you know stuff that now would be $40, $50, $100
mhm.
back then, it was like, how much is it? Like, oh, $2. Yeah, okay. My parents are pretty good about that. So
See, my folks were mostly cool about that. When I was growing up, we were less fortunate. We didn't have a whole lot, right? But my dad was cool enough that, when we went to the store, not all the time, but sometimes, and it made my day is he'd be like, "Okay, you can buy a GI Joe." And that's when GI Joes were like $3,
yeah,
right? Or even less than that. I remember that. We had just got done seeing a movie, and we went to the store, and he told me and my brother that we could pick out a figure. I picked out Mutt and Dog.
Nice.
Yeah, for GI Joe. $3 a figure. God, I had so many of them back then. Like
Oh yeah, I had a ton of them.
like all the GI Joes. I had some Transformers, not a lot. Some Thundercats, Silverhawks, the Centurions, the
Oh
ones.
yeah, those are awesome. Where they had all the parts that you just kind of like plugged into armor. It was
Yeah.
the green one, the blue one, and the red one.
What was the ones
And they had
that
the big monsters that they fought.
what was the ones that had the holograms in their
The
chest?
Visionaries.
Visionaries. Yeah, I used to have those. I never had Mask or anything like that, but I knew I had friends that did. So you'd bring your shit, they'd have their shit, and you
Yeah,
just
exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, my parent, like I said, my parents were generally pretty cool with that because they were happy that I was reading. So like anything you
Yeah.
want to like, if I was reading something, they'd be happy. And I like to read, so I'd read comics, I'd read books, whatever. So they were like, "Yeah, you're reading, fine," And they would tell their, told me like they would tell their friends, like, "Yeah, we'll buy him comics, like he's reading,"
You better believe it, man. That I tell people all the time, comic books have more unique words in them than paperback novels do. And
Oh yeah, I had a better vocabulary than the other kids in elementary school because I just, like, what other elementary school kid is going to be reading something that has the word invulnerable?
right, what's invulnerable mean, Dan? Well, do you want the DC version or the Marvel version? You tell
Yeah,
me.
but yeah, I remember when I found out there was a place that just sold comics in my neighborhood, that was like down the street from my house. I was like, what? And
Yeah.
then I remember it was the first time too that I was like, wait, adults read comics? When I was coming out of the comic shop and my gym teacher was going in, he was like, hey, Dan, like, hey, he's like, anything new good in this week? I was like, yeah, like Batman came out. I was like, all right, cool. And he's going in. I was like, wow, he reads comics? Like adults read these too?
That's just so awesome. You dig the shit out of that when stuff like that happens because you don't expect them to do stuff like that, right? Comics are for kids. That's what you've been told this whole time. And you
Yeah,
got
and I didn't even think about it like, well, yeah, that's adults that are in the store, but
yeah.
they work there, they own the store, like,
Yeah. They don't read this stuff. They just get it so I can.
but yeah, like you said, well, I mean, I knew they read it, but it's like, all right, yeah, it didn't really click with me because of course they own the store, but
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, you just meet people there, you're like, oh, hey, what are you reading? Oh, yeah, that's cool.
This is kind of off topic, but not really. My buddy Jason and Jason, if you're watching, hi, how are you? He sends me memes and stuff every day. Still to this day, I've known him since I was in 4th grade, and I still talk to him on a regular basis. Him and I, when his dad would come pick him up, I'd go with him sometimes on weekends that he went and spent time with his dad. His dad would give us quarters when he'd go in the grocery store to get groceries for the weekend. They had an arcade machine of Altered Beast.
Oh, I love that game.
Him and I fed that machine more quarters than a yearly salary just so we could beat it. And every weekend, every Friday, we'd go there and we'd try and get as far as we could, get so far. And his dad be like, okay, it's time to go. And then we'd have to leave. And then another weekend would come along and we'd sit there and just do it. Okay, we made it to level 3 last time. We know we could do that. Let's go up and try and get to the end of this game. I remember the day we beat that game. Like that was the biggest achievement of the damn year is beating Altered Beast and seeing it and realizing that all they're doing is filming a movie. We were spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen. We were blown away by that. We were like, "What? Are you kidding me? Oh my god!"
So, you just, before we went off on our tangent,
Yes, sorry.
you listed a bunch of titles for when you started like reading them regularly. What was it that, at what point did you go from being someone that just like was a casual comic reader, or all right, I'll pick them up when I go out or something, to someone that was, well, I'm going to be a collector. I'm not going to just pick them up occasionally, but I'm going to pick them up, because being the collector is getting them every week, every month when
Yeah.
they come out, plus going and finding the back issues. And all right, well, I got to bag and board these and take care of them too. Like, at what point did you go from reader to collector?
As an adult. So, from the time I really started, from the time of having those first few books, all the way up until right before I got married. I think a couple of years before I got married. Um, I only had like maybe 2 short boxes or a long box and a half of books that I would tout around with me. Never anything more than that because I either couldn't find a place, didn't know where to go, didn't even begin to know where to look, or just didn't have the time. When I eventually settled down, that is when I had a real opportunity to 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 dive into collecting the way that I wanted to. And I remember exactly how I did it. So I had stopped reading comics aside from here and there trades here and there or single issues here and there after the Clone Saga in Spider-Man in the mid to late 90s. I had stopped.
Yeah, I think that drove a lot of people away.
Yeah, and I didn't come back until Civil War. And I remember walking in, it was at the Knoxville Center Mall. It's not there anymore. It's torn down. There's big Amazon warehouse there now. But they had a comic store in there. It was called Sci-Fi City. And I remember walking in there. Like my wife at the time, she was off doing her own thing. We didn't have kids. She had her 2 kids, but I went into this store and just looking around and looking at all these comic books on the rack and stuff, and I was kind of overwhelmed. And I'm just picking this up here, picking that up there. I'm like, wow, these are totally different than when I was collecting before. And the guy come up to me and he's like, "Hey man, you look a little lost." I was like, "I kind of am." I said, "I haven't been reading comics since the 90s and I want to get back into them, but I don't know where to start." And that's like the prize question. And he's like,
Oh
"Oh,"
yeah,
he's like, "I got you." He's like, "Here." And he handed me issue 2 of Civil War. And he's like, "This is the new event that's out right now. The heroes are fighting against each other. It's Team Iron Man, Team Captain America." I said, "What? How is that even possible?" And he's like, "Read it here. Here's issue 2." I think it was the second or third print, whatever the cover was, whatever print it was, where Captain America's got the shield through the F-18.
oh yeah,
Yeah, I think that's second print, second or third. But he handed that to me. I picked up a couple of other books. I think I got Spider-Man and Batman and the typical stuff. But that's when I started the pull list for the very first time. Didn't know how to do that, didn't know nothing. And he's like, "Yeah, just tell me what issues you want. You get this discount, and I'll have them in here for you every week that they come out." I was like, "That's amazing. That's wonderful. Here's a list. I want all of this." And that's how it started. I'd get them bagged and board. I'd buy bags and boards. I did research on what bags and what boards were the best ones to use. I got comic boxes. I started like everything free they had on the counter, like the posters and
yeah,
the bookmarks and even the little cards or stickers. I'd grab as many of those as I could. I'd look at them and I'd be so bewildered. I'd be like, "Are these free?" "Yeah, they're free. Take whatever you want." I was like, "Are you sure?" "Yes, take them." "Oh, I'll take all of this." And when my wife and I at the time bought our house, I got the garage and I plastered that wall full of comic book posters and memorabilia and cards at the time because like the cards at the time weren't worth nothing. Nobody cared
yeah,
about them. So I took thumbtacks and pushed them into the wall. But I had all my favorites on there: Moon Knight, the Punisher, Spider-Man, and all kinds of other stuff. And yeah, that's when I dove headfirst back into comic books, and I didn't come back up for air. That I'm still down there.
yeah. So, what was the one thing that all of us as comic fans love doing is going to conventions.
Mhm.
When was it that I guess learned of like, hey, there's this thing called a comic convention where you can go. And there's just all kinds of people that just set up and sell comics. And what was the first one that you went to?
So I had known as an adult that there were conventions, but I just had never even dreamed of having the opportunity to go to one until I met my invisible friend Nick. For those of you that know, you know, right? Nick has been one of my best friends for a long time. He was there when my kids were born. I started work at a Taco Bell, and he was the manager, and we started talking and got on to role playing and Magic the Gathering and stuff, and realized we both like the same things. And we got onto the topic of comic books, and he's like, "Do you read comic books?" I was like, "Oh hell yeah, I do." I said, "I've got comic books at home." He's like, "Ah, so do I." And we instantly became. It's the scene from Step Brothers. Did we just become best friends? Yup. You want to go do karate in the garage? Yup. It was great, and him and I have been doing this pretty much ever since. It was God, it was this anime and sci-fi convention in Knoxville years ago. This was before my kids were born. But it was in this hotel lobby. It was this really small Knoxville anime and sci-fi convention, super small hotel lobby, or this one uh, room. I don't know. It was like a room. It was real tiny, but it was free admission to get in. And he's like, "Hey, you want to go?" I was like, "I've never been to a convention before. I would love to go to that." And I was so in awe the whole time, seeing people. I was amongst my people, seeing people cosplay and dress up as whatever they wanted to. Saw a guy dressed up as Moon Knight there. I thought that was one of the coolest things I'd ever seen in my life. Seeing all these vendors and stuff with comic books just lined up all over the place, and just being able to, like, I don't have a time limit. I can stand here and I can dig. Yeah, man, we got all day. Let's go. So we did. I don't even remember what I got while I was there. I just know that I had one of the greatest times I had ever had in my life. And I've been to a couple of other conventions since then. I've been to Wizard World in Nashville, and Wizard World, there goes my dog. Wizard World Nashville and Wizard World Chicago. I've been to those. I've been to the Lexicon in Lexington, Kentucky. Hey, guys, I'm in the middle of an interview here. Do you mind? Lord. So let's go with Wizard World Chicago first. I was invited to go by my aunt and my cousin. My cousin didn't want to go by herself, so I was the only one she knew that was into comic books, and she invited me and my family, my wife at the time, my kids, her kids, and all that stuff. And we were like, "Yeah, we'll go." Got tickets to meet Stan Lee there. Let's see here. I've told this story before. Like, this was in Chicago. So this was the first time I'd ever been to Chicago, and it was at the Rose Center or whatever it is. Jamie, Sonny, you guys know what I'm talking about. Kristen, you know too. Anybody from Chicago, it's the Rose whatever by the O'Hare International Airport. But Ethan was tiny. Graceland was a little bit bigger, and then my stepkids at the time, they were young, but they weren't super young. And we went, and the first person I met was George Perez. And I got him to sign my Infinity Gauntlet #1, because I brought that for Stan Lee to sign too. And that man was the nicest man I had ever met in my life. Like, nobody was in his line. Nobody was there waiting for him. And we just waddled up there, 2 strollers and 2 other kids, and me and my wife at the time. And he took the time out to talk to everybody. Like, everybody. He gave me time. He gave my wife at the time. The kids, each and every one of them, he talked to them, to Ethan, to Graceland, uh, everybody, and signed my Infinity Gauntlet #1. That was amazing. I loved meeting him. And then the tickets for Stan Lee, and trying to figure out like one book to have him sign. And I had the signature for George Perez on the Infinity Gauntlet, and I was debating on whether to do that one or something else, or try and find something. And Wizard World Chicago, that convention was enormous. That was
Yeah.
shoulder to shoulder. cosplayers galore. I saw one of the coolest Nova cosplayers I'd ever seen there. Like however long he took to build that costume, that thing was MCU accurate, right?
Nice.
That thing was great. He had
I
the
don't think I've
glowing.
ever seen a Nova cosplayer.
Oh, dude, he had the glowing eyes and
Oh, cool.
this metal helmet with the bracers looked straight out of Annihilation, is what he
Nice.
looked like. Like that cover where he's going like this.
Yeah.
Yeah, he looked just like that. Just like that. But Stanley. So trying to figure out what book to get Stanley to sign. And it was a debate on whether I was going to go dig for something or look in what I had in my bag. And I saw that George Perez book, and I was like, well, shit, I'll just get him to sign that. All the characters
Yeah.
on here, he had something to do with at least most of them. So get in line, waited about an hour, talking to everybody and stuff like that. There was this one guy that had this sleeve of a tattoo, like going from wrist all the way up to shoulder of all different Marvel characters and stuff.
Wow.
And he had a space right on his arm where he was going to have Stan Lee sign. Dude, it was
Oh, I
amazing.
guess have him sign it and then go get it tattooed in.
Yeah, get it worked in
Nice.
there. But an hour goes by, and then the handlers come up for Stan Lee. I'll never forget this. And they say, okay, if you're here for Mr. Lee, he will be coming out in a few minutes. Here are some rules. Don't talk to Mr. Lee. Give us your book. We will make sure it is okay for him to touch. Once he signs it, move along. We do not have the time for you to have a conversation, nor does he. And people were not too happy about that. Boo,
I
boo, boo.
imagine you wait there for an hour. You see, you
Yep.
at least want to say hi.
Yep. And they were very adamant. Don't talk to him. Don't say anything to him, all that kind of stuff. And they were like, if you have multiple items to sign, you have to have a new ticket per item. Those tickets were $80 a piece. And there were people with more than one thing. And they said you can only have one item signed at a time. Then just go to the back of the line and work your way up. And they said, we want to get this through fast and quick. And they bring him out, and like seeing him on screen and stuff, you expect him to be larger than life. He's a small, old, frail man.
Yeah.
Liver spots and all that stuff. Had the big glasses, next to no hair. And he comes out and he waves, and he takes a super long time to get to his chair, and he sits down. And these handlers are doing whatever, and you see him kind of go like this, kind of waving them off, and he's like, get away from me. And the line starts to move, right? And what does Stan Lee do? He does exactly what the handlers told us not to do. And he starts talking to everybody. Every single person got at least 2 to 3 minutes with him. And he didn't give a shit. He didn't care at all.
Yeah.
All these people are standing in line waiting to see him. When he comes out and raises his hand, the whole place goes wild. It was amazing. So the line starts to move, and you can hear him talking to people laughing and all that other stuff. And finally I get up there. And if anything ever happens to me after this interview, I can rest easy knowing that Stan Lee said these words to me. But I hand the book to the handlers, Infinity Gauntlet #1. They take it, they pull it out of the bag and board. They don't care about condition. They're manhandling that worse than I have when I went to jail. We can talk about that too, so people can know exactly why I spent time in the penal system. But because that's a funny story. But anyways, I digress. They are fiddling around with this book. They slide it in the bag and the board down the line, and I'm nervous. My palms are sweaty, my knees weak, arms are heavy, all that good stuff, and moving along. And here comes me standing next to Stan Lee. And he looks at me and he goes, how you doing today? And I go, I'm doing great, Mr. Lee. How are you? I'm doing just fine. And they put the book in front of him, and he looks at it for a minute, and he goes, okay, where do you want me to sign it? And I said, anywhere you want to, Mr. Lee. And he points and he says, how about right here? And I said, yep, that's good. And he goes, you're damn right it is. Signs Excelsior. And I was like, that's fucking amazing. This is the greatest thing I have ever had happen to me in my life. This is better than my kids being born. This is better than getting married. This is better than me being born. This is better than the earth being created. Thank you, Mr. Lee. Gone. I was in heaven the rest of the day. Nothing else could have happened to me that day. I was like, I miss Stan Lee. What'd you do today? Oh, that's right. You didn't meet him, but I did. I loved it. Yeah. Wizard World Nashville. That's where I got to meet Mike Grell. That was amazing. That was one of the coolest things because he's one of my favorites, right?
He's such a good guy too.
He did. I got the book. I got one of them right here. I got all three of these signed.
Nice.
If you watch the Green Arrow episode for Comic Character of the Week, guys, you'll see me show all of these. But had my stepson at the time with me. It was his birthday, and he was there to see Jason David Frank, which we did get to do. One of the coolest dudes I ever got to meet. Dude was so sweet, so nice, so warm. He was
That's what I
awesome.
heard.
Yeah, he was great. But went to first we went to the inker for Greg Capullo, like when he was doing New 52 Batman, Galopion. I know I'm saying that wrong, but we went there first because my stepson and I had the 2 issues of Batman that were numbers right next to each other. I think it was like 612 and 613 or something like that. And we go up there and get him to sign our books. He was like, oh, that's cool. You guys got issues right next to each other. And I was like, yeah, today's his birthday and this is what he wanted to do. We saw that you were going to be here and he wanted to come and get a signature from you. And he looked right at him. Kid's 12 years old. And he's like, is today really your birthday? And he goes, yeah, it is. He's like, how old are you? I'm 12. He said, okay. And he said, here, look at these. And he showed us all his prints and stuff. And we were digging through and he's like, pick one you like. And my stepson at the time was oblivious, but I figured out what the hell was going on. And he picks this one out. He signs it and he goes, here you go. Happy birthday. And
awesome.
My stepson was like, what, really? Are you serious? And he's like, yep, that's for you, man. Go ahead. I was like, dude, you didn't have to do that. I said, that was really cool. It was really awesome. He's like, no, it's kid's birthday. He wanted to come up and get a signature from me. At least I can do is give this to him. It's like, that's great. But Mike Grell, we went up there and met Mike Grell, and I told this story on the Green Lantern episode or the Green Arrow episode too. But his handlers were like, no, he's busy. And Mike Grell was like, come over here, get away from them, come over here. And we go over there. I got my 3 books and talking to him, and I'm like, you are one of my favorite artists. You are one of my favorite writers. Green Arrow is one of my favorite characters. I love everything you've done. Longbow Hunters is one of my favorite stories. And he took the books out of my hands, started flipping through them and pointing out different things, different panels, talking about how DC wanted it done this way or not this way. And he decided to do it his own way or whatever, and signed all 3 of those books. That was awesome. That is also the time where I learned that not all creators are there for the people. That was with Arthur Sweetum and I think Mike Zeck. No, not Mike Golden.
I was going to say, because I met Mike Zeck and he was super nice.
Yeah, not Zeck. It was Golden. Mike Golden. Mike Golden did a lot of G.I. Joe covers. And I had issue 23. This is also where I learned that some of these guys charge money. Because I was under the impression, that they're there to sign. They're there to sign. You didn't have to pay anything, which paying for signatures does not bother me at all. I have no qualms about paying for signatures, but I had got no pre-prep or no pep talk about, hey, you got to pay these guys money. So I was not prepared. And I went up to Golden first and I set the book down and I'm standing there waiting and he's standing there waiting. And we're just kind of looking at each other and he goes, that'll be $5. Oh, hang on. Okay, here you go. Sorry, I didn't know. He's like, no, it's okay. $5, I'll sign anything you want. So he signed that for me. But Arthur Sweetum, I went over to him. So now I'm prepared. Now I'm prepared to pay money, and I'm looking for their signs and stuff like that. And he's got this sign where it says, I don't even remember how much he charged. I know it was like $10 or something like that, but it was one time, right? He would charge that amount, and then he'd sign as many things as you wanted him to sign.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I've seen some people that that do that.
But I went up there. I had a couple of Marvel Zombie books, and no, you had to buy a print. You had to buy one of his prints, and then he would sign anything else you wanted. So the prints varied in size, $10, $20, whatever. But I went up there, and there was one other guy in front of me, and I stood there for 20 minutes, like in close proximity as we are on the screen. That's how close I was to Arthur Sweden. And he didn't even look at me until he was done having a conversation with this guy that had nothing to do with comic books. I think it had to do with pianos or something stupid. Well, stupid in my eyes, but he didn't even look at me until he was done talking to this dude. And then as soon as he was done talking to this dude, I'm pissed. Like, I'm standing there, I'm waiting, I'm moving, I'm shuffling, I'm this and that. I want Arthur Sweetum's fucking autograph. And he's not even paying attention to me. And after he's done talking to this guy, then he turns around and he looks at me, stone cold face, and he's like, you have to buy a print. Prints are $10 to $40 each. And if you buy one print, then I will sign as much as you want me to sign. Okay. So I bought a print for my stepdaughter at the time, and then set my books down. Foop, 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 sign. No, thank you. No, nothing. Off I went. I was like, fuck that guy. Yeah.
The when me and Sal when me and Sal went to the shop today, I was talking to at Beyond Comics, the guy that is there, John, great guy, and he told us, he said that he was the first person that Michael Avon Oeming ever charged for a sketch.
Oh,
he's
wow.
like, I was the first one he ever charged. I was like, how did that happen? He goes, well, it was whatever convention they were at, and he was the first one in line. So when they opened it up for him to go up there, he had his sketchbook, and he handed it to him, and he said, how much for a Hulk sketch? And it was whoever was sitting beside Oeming. And he said the look on his face when he went, how much for a Hulk sketch? He went, he had
No
this
one's ever asked me that before.
On his face. And he looked, and I forget who he said the artist beside him was, but he looked at him, he goes, how much would you charge for a Hulk sketch on this, on this? And he goes, $40. And he goes, $40. And he was like, hey, great. So he gives him $40, and he's like, and it turned out fantastic. It was really awesome. But I said, that's why when you said how much for this, it clearly never occurred to him, like, hey, I could charge money to do these sketches for people.
Right.
I said, if you just hand him the book and said, hey, can I get a Hulk sketch? He probably would have just done it for free. But he's like, I didn't mind paying it. It was a great sketch. I'm like, that's a pretty good story.
That's wonderful. Yeah, those Wizard World Chicago Lexicon in Lexington, Kentucky. That was a good show. We went up there for my stepson at the time to meet Rey Mysterio Jr., which he did. But that was just really busy, like really full of people. And that was not as good a time. My son, Ethan, he cosplayed as Star-Lord. So he got to truck around like that, all the Captain Americas and the Black Widows and all the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy and all that stuff. Thought he was the coolest thing ever. Got pictures with everybody. Oh, little Star-Lord, come over here. Yep, done.
Well, that's great. Like you said, not every, it's just like anything, whenever you meet actors or musicians, like some of them are cool, some of them are dicks, but it's good that you get to meet, like you said, Stan Lee and Capullo and, and
I never got to meet Capullo. The line for Capullo when I was in,
or who was it you said gave Ethan gave
it was the inker for Capullo, like
Oh,
Galapia.
the anchor. Okay, I thought you
Yeah,
said it was him. But either or like with Perez, you said like
yeah,
you get to meet these guys and like Grell and like they're really nice and
yeah.
I mean it's like anybody as a musician. I know as a musician and artist when someone says like, "Hey, I really like your stuff." It's like that's why I do this. That's great.
Exactly, yeah. As a musician, having people come up to you after a show, after you poured a bucket of sweat on the floor, and you did more energy than you have all day in 20 minutes,
Yeah,
and you're out of breath and all that stuff, and people come up to you and they're like, "Dude, that was the coolest thing I have ever seen. Thank you.
yeah,
That's why we do this. That's why it's done."
yeah. That and for people to buy me beer when I'm on stage was always nice.
Dude,
I
you're
just go
you're
up on stage and be like, I'm drinking this tonight. Like, oh, I need a beer. Then you see like,
yeah,
halfway through the next song, someone's bringing you up a beer. I'm like, all
right. You're standing there playing, doing whatever you're doing, and you see a guy go systematically for every member in the band, and they point and point and point at what you're drinking, and you just go like that, and they come back with booze. Yeah, that's great.
so we diverged, but so getting back to life of comics, as people can see, behind me, I've got other comic related stuff. And clearly behind you,
Yeah.
you've got prints and stuff like that. So at what point did you go from just buying comics to going, well, I'm going to get action figures, I'm going to get prints, I'm going to get cards, like all this other stuff that goes along with comics?
So,
Not including that when you're a little kid and you like buy a Spider-Man figure because
right.
that's what kids do. You buy action figures. But as a comic fan, at what point were you like, oh, I can expand, I can buy all this other stuff that goes with it?
So I have to go back to this. When these card sets were out, so Marvel Universe Series 1, Series 2, Series 3, G.I. Joe, the DC Cosmic Powers and DC Cosmic Teams,
Yeah.
all of those things. I was a teenager at that time. And me and my brother would get money, like living in Michigan. You can collect soda cans, soda bottles off the street, and you get 10-cent deposit on them.
Oh yeah, I
People,
used to do that as a kid too.
yep,
Fill up trash bags, go to the recycling, have a trash bag full of crushed soda cans.
you better believe it, right? You have garbage bag full of that stuff, just wandering around town picking that up, and that's back at a time when 13 and 14-year-old can truck around to town and not worry about nothing. Nobody's going to grab you or anything like that, and your parents don't care as long as you're home before dark.
Yeah.
And you get this garbage bag full of soda cans and you take them to the gas station where they sell these packs of cards that you like. You turn them in, you get the money, and then you're looking through. Now this, I don't know if you did this, but we did this. Try and feel the packs for the holograms
No,
and stuff like
I
that.
didn't do that one. No.
Right? So we knew that there were special cards in there. We knew there were holograms in there, and we thought we were creative enough to where we could feel the packs and feel the difference and consistency of the cardboard, or that the holograms might be a little bit bigger, et cetera, whatever the case may be. But we'd buy Marvel Series 1, Series 2, Series 3. Me and my brother Joe would buy G.I. Joe, the card series,
Yeah, I remember those.
all the time, man. Each of us, we'd get our own packs. Me and Joe would have our own stacks of cards and stuff like that, and getting what we get out of the packs. We do trades and all of that jazz. I remember getting the holograms for Series 1, thinking that was the coolest thing ever. Series 2, the different designs on that.
Let's see, Series 1. Let me see if I can remember them. There was Magneto,
Yep.
Spider-Man.
Yep.
There were 5 of them.
Yep.
I can't remember what the other 3 were now. I know one of them wasn't one of them like was like Wolverine fighting Hulk.
So it was Magneto, Spider-Man, Silver Surfer, Wolverine, and Spider-Man versus Green Goblin.
I knew that's okay. I knew it was one of them that was 2 characters fighting.
Yep. But back when I was that young, we were doing that. Now, I had GI Joes, I had Transformers, I had all the figures and stuff. And when Toy Biz came out with the figures, I was getting those figures.
Oh yeah,
But as an adult, being a collector, I remember getting the Marvel Legends like Series 1 or Series 2, um, and trying to get all the pieces for Galactus. I did not succeed, but I remember how much fun I had doing that, and I thought the figures were expensive then,
yeah,
compared to how much they are now. But I am not like certain figures I'll keep in the box, but mostly no. They get taken out. I will keep the box, but I'll take the figures out and I'll mess around with them. Like if you could see in my apartment over here, next to my balcony door, I've got the clamshell only of Castle Grayskull. And inside on Starscream's throne chair from the studio series,
nice.
figure sits Master Chief in
Oh,
the Mark IV armor. He has an Energon cube and the head of a Sentinel next to him, and then on there is a Starscream from the Master series. I've got Doctor Doom and Wolverine from the Secret Wars line, Superman and Robin from the Superpowers line. Uh, what are those dudes from Battlestar Galactica?
the
The
Cylons.
Cylons. My son's got a Cylon over there. I've got a medieval Spawn sitting over there. Those are all loose. Over here on my bookshelves, that have all my trades. I've got my Creeper figure that I've got. I love the
Which
McFarlane.
you can see him pick up in the McKay's on the spot video that he did. Tim and
Not
Wes did a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, not too long ago. I've got what do I have? Eradicator, Superman from the McFarlane line. All of these are from McFarlane's line. I have the Superman, well, the Batman from Speeding Bullets from Elseworlds, and I have him on a Crisis on Infinite Earths stand.
I know
Uh,
how much you like that book.
I love it. It's one of my favorites.
That's a
It's
great one. It's a
one
really
of
cool one. Where they did that one and they did the one where he got the Green Lantern ring.
Yep. I don't have that though. I have the Arkham Asylum Batman over there. Then down below on my Marvel shelf, I have Deathlock, US Agent, High Evolutionary, uh, Tom Holland, Spider-Man from Infinity War. No, from No Way Home, and Gambit from X-Men 97. Then over here, I have my Avengers. I have Iron Man from the 70s, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, Marvel Legends, Captain America. I have 3 of the 4 Fantastic Four. I have a Batman Returns figure, a Sentinel. Still going back over here, the Transformers Red Line figures. I have Optimus, Megatron, Bumblebee, Galvatron, Soundwave, and Optimus Primal. A ton of the GI Joes from the Classifieds line. I've got them over there, and then over here I've got Magneto, Galileo shuttlecraft from Star Trek, Beholder from D&D. I've got 3 lunch boxes up there: one AC/DC, one 80s Transformers lunchbox, and then the lunchbox they had at GameStop that came with a Funko Pop of Megatron and Duke, and some stickers, a keychain, all that stuff. And I've got this is what I keep on my desk to mess around with when I
Nice.
get bored or need something to do. And he is super posable, by the way. Then I've got the Lego figures that my son got for me. Those are over here. I got all kinds of stuff. As an adult, I think I'm having more fun now collecting figures and accessories and non-comic book stuff in the comic book world than I ever did when I was a kid.
But there's so much more available. I mean,
Yeah.
outside of like, Transformers and GI Joes, which they didn't start in comics. They started as toy lines that
Yeah.
became animated series in comics. But, if you were a comic fan, like, when we were kids, there was there was the Secret Wars toy line,
Hmm.
and there was the
Superpowers.
toy line.
Yeah.
And you could go back even further, and there were like the the Mego ones.
Yeah.
But that was it. And then
Mhm.
when they started having the toys for like the Tim Burton Batman movie,
Yeah.
and then they started having all of that stuff, and it just
The
grew
Kenner
and
line.
grew and grew. Yeah,
I had those. I had Batman, I had the Batmobile, I had the Batwing, I had all of that stuff.
yeah. Where all they did was just take they just took the superpowers Batman and painted it black.
Yes. Very much so. And then did different shades of colors
Yeah.
for yeah.
Yeah, like, oh, here's radiation suit Batman. Like, I don't remember him wearing that in the movie, but whatever.
Right?
That's cool. I'll get it.
Torpedo Batman,
Yeah.
underwater Batman, outer space Batman. When do you go to outer space? Yeah. No,
So, so as a comic fan, the toys, the posters, the prints, the
mhm.
figures, the statues, the comics themselves, everything. Which are your favorite things in your collection?
So let's go back here. Right. We'll do this first. So this is my most prized possession. And that has nothing to do with comic books. That is my daughter's first painting. And that will forever be there. So when she becomes a rich and famous artiste, greater than the likes of Picasso or Bob Ross, I will have the one of one that has her signature there that will never get sold. That's why it's amongst all this other stuff. Everything else around it pales in comparison. But let's go there. Okay. So this one here and that one there, I got from, and that is also where I learned that people are not who they say they are. Um, these pieces of work were done by an artist that lived in Italy. And it took me from time of payment until receiving these 3 years.
Jeez.
And the reason for that is because this guy would get a bunch of people to give him money. He would work on some of the stuff and then give you the same line of bullshit. Oh, scusi, I have COVID, I have this, I have that. And then he takes pictures of himself out at the mountains or in the middle of Rome and all this other stuff. And you're messaging him and you're like, hey, I've given you $400, 200 a piece for each of these. Where's my stuff? And it took 3 years to do that. I lost money on these because there's another piece that I'm supposed to have, Venom and Carnage duking the snot out of each other, that I paid $150 for that I never got. And his manager is a POS too. So that's where I learned that people are not who they claim to be. The artwork is gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's exactly what I wanted. Right up top, it's Harley Quinn, Moon Knight, and Hawkeye. Myself and my kids' favorite characters. Down here, it's the villains. It's Thanos, Doctor Doom, and Cobra Commander. Ethan chose Cobra Commander. I chose the other two. They're beautiful paintings. They're gorgeous. I'll never get rid of them. But every time I look at them, I get a little mad. This here I found at an antique store, and it says that it was screen. I love this because right here, we'll get back down to normal. Here it says, who do you know who wrote the screenplay for Superman the movie?
It was
Famous
what's the name
director
that wrote The Godfather?
Francis Ford Coppola. Right.
Well,
So
no, Coppola directed The Godfather. It was the guy that wrote the Godfather book that wrote the movie.
if I remember right, Francis Ford Coppola is the one that wrote the screenplay for Superman the movie. Let me double check that.
Yeah,
Story Mario Puzo. I'm
Mario
sorry.
Puzo. That's
We're
it. Yeah,
we're there. We're around the same person.
yeah,
But
I know because Mario Puzo was the one that wrote the novel Godfather that the movie was based on.
yeah. So here it says screenplay by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster.
Oh,
And I love it.
that's
It's
awesome.
it's amazing because it is so factually wrong. But it's great. It's beautiful. Whoever did this had good intentions, but they got that wrong. So that's great. This here, Optimus Prime. This I got at the convention that Wes and I did not too long ago. Got this signed by William Russell. This is awesome. I love this. This is one of my favorites. So everything on the wall is a favorite, right? I don't think I could choose just one. If I had to pick, not counting my daughter's stuff, it'd probably be either this, which I got from Kristen. This is one of my favorite movies, Maximum Overdrive, or maybe this poster here that I got from my buddy Paul of the New 52 Justice League.
Well, what would you say is your, if you had to pick, just a couple of the most prized books in your possession? Doesn't mean that they have to be the most valuable books. They could be the most valuable. They could be the most sentimental. But what would you say are the most important books in your collection to you?
So that's easy. The most important book in my collection, and I can see Gary smiling because he knows what's coming.
I know what it is.
Yeah, it's my JLA versus Avengers trade paperback that was artwork by George Perez and written by Kurt Busiek, right?
Yeah, Kurt Busiek.
Busiek, yeah.
George Perez.
That book I got from my brother after he passed away. So I will never get rid of that book. It's first print. It's not even dog-eared. It's been read several times. Once by him, many by me. But I'll never ever get rid of that book. If I get rid of everything else in my collection, that book will always stay with me. It's one of the few things I have left. My brother passed away from suicide, as you guys well know, and that was one of the last things that him and I were actively talking about, because we were talking about Captain America, the First Avenger. Like, that movie was getting ready to come out, and that was the last movie before the Avengers. And he hadn't seen it. He had seen everything else up to that, and we were talking about how excited we were for that. And he told me about a couple of trades that he had gotten. He had gotten Civil War, JLA Avengers. What else did he get? I think Death of Superman or something like that. Everybody has that, though.
Yeah.
But after he passed away, when we went up to Michigan to his house, that was one of the first things I grabbed. Like, I didn't care what his ex-wife or his now widowed wife said or tried to do or anything like that. I was like, I'm taking this, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. And that went home with me. Beyond that, I think my 9.8 Amazing 351, only because of the remembrance of that is the first book I paid for with my own money. Chrome #1, the book that nobody knows about.
Have you ever thought about getting that graded?
I have 5 copies, and one I think is a 9.8 candidate. And if it doesn't come back as a 9.8, I will scour the interwebs for a 9.8 candidate until I get one. So I'll have all the ones on the census. But beyond that, I think those are my most prized comic book possessions.
Nice.
Yeah.
So as someone that's been, a little bit off and on, but essentially a comic fan your entire life, how would you say being a comic fan and collecting comics has impacted you growing up and then your life, up to now as an adult?
So as a kid, it was not kosher to say that you were a fan of comic books or collecting comic books.
I remember very much.
Yeah, if you were 16 and you, aside from your group of friends who didn't say nothing, if you got caught with action figures, it was a beat down that day. Anybody that was born after 2008, you guys don't understand, and I don't mean that as like gatekeeping or trying to say that my life was harder than yours. It was just different, right? Dan, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
You didn't go to high school and see everybody walking around in Spider-Man and X-Men and
No.
Batman shirts.
If I wore something like
Batman was
this,
different. Batman, you know,
Yeah.
especially after the 89 movie, that was different. Everybody was into Batman, but that was a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Superman, I mean, Superman is Superman. Superman was always like you had saw someone with a Superman logo on the shirt. It's like whatever. It's Superman. But like all the rest of them, there weren't people walking around with like t-shirts and notebooks and stuff like that all the time. You had comics. You got made fun of. You got teased. You got pushed around.
Yeah. Wearing something like this now, nobody, I get more compliments than I do anything else. People are talking about how much they love the movie, or we engage in discussion, right? And you find your fellow nerds.
Yeah.
Nerds was a very naughty word back in the day. Now it's a term of endearment. Yeah, collecting comic books. If I wore something like this in high school, that would have been a target. I'd have known that I was going to get hit that day. As a kid, you were very selective about, at least growing up, on my end, you were selective about who you told that you read comic books. You were very leery of anybody that came around that you barely knew or didn't know that said that they read or collected, and you were very cautious about how you worded things with them until you trusted them enough to show them. As an adult, I think that the time that I realized like everything was changing, going from this is no longer a me and my friends only club to this is everybody now, was when I went and saw Avengers. So leading up to that, right? You had the multitude of Superman and Batman movies from DC, and you had the Spider-Man and the Fox X-Men movies and things like that. But that was about it, right? And Blade and other underliers and things like that here.
Yeah, there'd be the occasional like Blade, but Blade was so far removed from like normal comics. Let's face it, as popular as the movies were, Blade is a character that's never been able to sustain his own book long term, as much as Marvel has pushed him. But it was so, if you didn't know that was based on a comic,
it said in little words.
Yeah, it wasn't like a superhero thing, it was more of a horror action thing. But yeah, you're right. You would have the occasional like, there's this Hulk movie here, or stuff like that here or there. But
yeah,
now
I remember standing in line for the Avengers in 3D. And it was once again, married at the time. I'm not married anymore, guys, right? There's no rings here. As beyond,
you hear that, ladies? He is single and ready to mingle.
Only until 9 o'clock, and then I got to come home and take my ibuprofen because my back hurts. Yeah, married at the time. Went and saw this at the theater in Turkey Creek in Knoxville, and I was standing there with my wife at the time and the kids that were old enough to go, and we were halfway back from getting our tickets taken. And I remember turning around and looking, and the line for just the Avengers went out the door and down to the end of the theater parking lot. And I was like, holy shit, it's going to be different from here forward. And it has been. I every time a new movie comes out, I go with my sister, my brother-in-law, their kids. I take my kids, I take my niece, and we all go see the movies together. We make it a big event now. Watching the shows on TV and all of that stuff. I mean, comic books, like Jamie said it in his interview, right? Comic books saved his life. And in a different sort of way, it brought me out of a major depression. When my brother passed away, like my brother and I'm second of five. He was third of five. We hated each other growing up. We would fight constantly, like fist fights. and stuff like that until we got older, and then we became best friends and we were inseparable and we hung out. So losing him was like losing a large part of me. Um, but I remember I like up to the point of his death, I was playing Halo Reach on Legendary by myself. And after he passed away, I didn't touch it for 6 months. And then in the middle of this depression, part of it was this and part of it's something else. Uh, I sat down and picked up the controller again and forced myself to play the rest of that game and beat it on Legendary alone. That was a major accomplishment for me because it brought me out of a depression. It did something. It made me do something, made me finish something that I was constantly talking to my brother about before he passed away. And
It gives you something to focus on other than
yeah,
I'm I'm here and everything sucks. Like,
yeah,
all right, well, everything out there might still suck, but I got to focus on this, and it gives you something else to have going in your brain.
that's exactly right. Because it's either you stare at the floor, you stare at the wall, you stare at the ceiling, or you cry all day.
Yeah.
And you got to figure out which one you're going to do that's going to hurt the least. But playing that video game helped bring me out. And then there was this website, and some of you may know it, others may not. It's still out there. It was called stashmycomics.com. And I was in the message boards. I didn't say or do much, but I was there. And they were looking for somebody to write reviews. And I remember talking to my wife at the time, and I was like, I would really like to do that. I said, I'm good at writing. I know how. I got to do something. And she said, go ahead. What's stopping you? So I did that, and I wrote a review, wrote a review on Uncanny X-Men Annual number 11, and wrote a review on What If number 24, which is one of my top 3 favorite stories of all time, and wrote a review on Chrome number 1, the books I was most passionate about, the stuff that I loved. And then after that, after I did those 3 as a guest writer, they brought me on full time to write reviews for new books every week and back issues. There was this column called Back Issue Bin to the Future that I used to write reviews for, and I loved doing that. I absolutely loved it. And that's where I got the taste of being on a podcast for the first time, was on the stashmycomics.com podcast. Came on as a guest first, and eventually with a restructure of the podcast, I came on as a host with some really cool people. Tom Huffner, Kelly Bohoric, my buddy Jason. Uh, we had a blast, just all of us as friends talking about comic books and all kinds of things. It was amazing. I got to do an interview with Todd McFarlane. Got to do an interview. We did interviews with Eric Larson, the guy who was the artist on the New 52 Flash. Interviewed a ton of independent creators. That was also the place where I learned how to network. I ended up getting review copies from almost every major comic book studio, with the exception of Marvel and DC, and they didn't give them out to anybody, but I got everybody else.
Nice.
It was great, and that revitalized me. It put new fresh air into my lungs. It help me see that the world isn't so dark and bleak, and that there are a lot of people that are as interested or even more interested in this stuff than I am. Met a lot of great people, and then that eventually leads me to here. This is one. I'm not saying this because we're here, right? I'm saying this because this is true. This is one of the greatest things that I have ever done, doing Codex, meeting you guys and getting I mean it when I say I get to hang out with my best friends multiple times a week
Yeah.
and talk about shit that we love and enjoy. And it doesn't feel like work to me. I mean, when you guys send me a bunch of stuff to edit, it does. but beyond that, I get to sit with Jamie and Sonny and you and Sal and Gary and Wes and Kristen and everybody else, and it's amazing, and I love it, and I kid you not, my door gets locked a half hour before showtime, and it doesn't get unlocked until I'm done. That this brought me out of a depression. All of this brought me out of sinking further and further down into nothingness, and showed me that, reminded me that there are amazing stories in these books. There are stories that I can relate to. There are stories that are going to make me laugh. There are stories that are going to make me cry. Unashamedly, there are stories that are going to make me say, "Holy shit, what the fuck?" and "Oh my god," and that this is some of the most beautiful stuff that you could ever look at. And I'm proud to say that I am a full-fledged participant in all of this. I love it.
Well, awesome. Thank you for sitting down and talking with me, for being the next one on the list.
Yeah.
So we'll see who's next on the chopping block from CodeX.
I think you should do Sal next.
Sal?
Yeah.
All right, Sal. You're next up.
Give him the hard questions, though.
Sal, how many copies of Venom do you own? Be honest now.
This is a need to know, not a kind of sorta. This is
I got to hook him up to. I remember in the first Ghostbusters when Venkman had him hooked up to the thing, and every time he gave the wrong answer, he gave him a little zap. And I'm like, now, Sal, be honest. How many different copies of the same issue of Venom do you buy every month?
Figure 8.
Just 2.
That's wrong. I didn't know you were going to be giving me electric shock. We're paying you, aren't we? You're here, aren't you? Oh my God, Dan! Thank you, man, so much for letting me sit here and talk with you.
Yeah, man, it's always great.
Yeah.
All right, well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this interview, and stay tuned because there's plenty of other people, the CodeX, who are going to have to sit down and be in the interviewee chair.
Yeah.
So thank you for tuning in. As always, make sure to check us out online at thecodexstation.com. I know for a fact that there is at least one new shirt that's coming soon.
Yes, I am excited about that. I've seen preliminary, and I cannot wait to see the final product.
Yes. So thank you, Tim. Thank you, everyone, for watching. And until next time, we will catch you by the spinner rack.